want you to think about the last workout that you did. Not the exercises, not the weight you used, just what you actually felt. Because for the longest time, I convinced myself I was training hard, I pushed weight, I followed programs, I copied workouts I saw online. But when I really stopped and asked myself what I was actually feeling during each rep, the truth completely hit me. I wasn't feeling my glutes at all, not even a little, most of the time. And the crazy part is I didn't even realize this was happening. I completely assumed that if I was sweating, if I was shaking and completely exhausted, then my glutes must be growing. But what I was really doing was reinforcing the wrong movement patterns over and over again, which was strengthening those ones and weakening my glute ones, which I'm going to explain later on in the video. The moment I realized this and understood what was happening this whole time, everything changed. So today I'm breaking down exactly what finally made my glutes grow after years of doing everything right and seeing barely anything at all, let alone the results that I was dreaming about. But you're gonna see why most people stay stuck for years without even realizing what is holding them back. So for one, before I started deeply researching every single day on my free time and coaching hundreds of women one-on-one for glute growth, I didn't even realize that muscles only grow the way you want, especially for the glutes and for the glute growth you're wanting, when it is the primary mover of the whatever movement that you are doing. So what that looks like is when you're doing Bulgarian split squats, you have to get your brain to use your glutes as the primary mover during that movement if you want to get the absolute most from that movement for glute growth. You can make so many different exercises different primary movers as them from here. It's all from here, and you control it from here, just like how I'm lifting my arm up to point to my head to do this. I'm controlling it from here. You control your muscles from here. You control what you're doing from here. It all comes from here. I cannot stress that enough. So when you're doing your movements, you cannot be just going through the motions and expecting your glutes just to grow out of nowhere. I say this in almost every single video that I make. This is something I hit home heavily in Glute Reset and what it's all about, using no weight for 30 days just to hammer this home in your brain, to rewire your brain. That's why I call it Glute Reset. It teaches you to use your glutes as the primary mover of every single movement that you will do during glute reset and then after glute reset, even down to walking on a treadmill. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about some activation movements. And sure enough, when you do that, you start feeling it a lot more. And when you feel it a lot more, you have better contraction, control, and hold and feel of the muscle. That's what allows it to grow. Most women, including me, started off quad dominant. This is something that I struggled with a lot and became so frustrated that I just kept lifting heavier and heavier, and the more frustrated that I got, and that was just heavily contributing to why my glutes were not growing. And I'll tell you a fix later on in the video, but that was number 2 why my glutes weren't growing. My glutes were completely asleep and not contributing at all, unless I was doing things like hip thrusts or something where my brain had no other option but to use my glutes. But anything other than that, especially Bulgarian split squats, it was almost impossible for me to feel my glutes for that movement, and I'm sure it's that same way for a lot of you. What lifting heavy and everything does is it creates the illusion of all that hard work going to your glutes, and that's not your fault. That's the industry's fault for being so young. There's barely little to no funding for glute growth, so I say that in a lot of my videos, but I have to keep saying it because a lot of you probably wonder why what I'm saying seems so brand new, because glute growth and bodybuilding as a whole, the gym culture as a whole, really started in the 70s, really. So it's a brand new thing, really. And just supplements got created in the 90s. So I completely assumed that my lack of results meant that I had bad genetics. when I knew I didn't have bad genetics because I always played sports and stuff and did track and everything. But yet when I went to the gym, I had completely flat glutes for years, and I was training for years. I wasn't talking just 6 months, it was years on end. I was progressing in weight. I was doing every single thing right. There wasn't one thing that I was not hitting on the head when it came to mass instruction and everything that was on the internet at the time. But now I just realized that it was the complete lack of neural attention, so neural control from the brain to the glute area. I didn't give any attention to that. I was just caring and focusing about the weight and counting reps. Weight, counting reps. How much weight am I doing? How many reps am I doing? How many reps am I doing with this amount of weight? That's all I cared about. Then anything other than that was how much protein was I eating, at how many calories of a surplus at the same time, and I was doing all of it. I was progressing, I was consistent, I never skipped, and so this is complete proof that it was the neural control that was the key problem here, and that's how I created Glute Reset, and it's completely fixed hundreds of women now, and you will get that if you stick to it, because I started out most likely flatter than you and more unresponsive than you. I would bet so much money on that. So it's so powerful that you see results within the first workout in Glute Reset. That's how insanely groundbreaking this method is, and how I evolved it from hundreds of test group studies and hundreds of online one-on-one clients personally before I created it into this universal system that it is now. And that is why I call it my neural pathway method. It's a skill you need to build up, just like riding a bike. The neural pathways are in parallel movement with the glute growth, and you should always think of it like that. So the fixes that actually worked are what I already described, which are neural pathway development and establishment. That should be your number one priority, so you can feel, contract, and control them in the first place in order to grow them with weight later on. I deliberately took off the weight from my movements, and also because I got a back injury that forced me to do that. That's how I discovered the method in the first place, because I had to take 30 days off with no weight, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, my glutes are growing way more than usual, and so I evolved it from there. It's been years, and that's what Glute Reset is now in the description down below. Also, what I did was slow down every single rep that I did. I went from doing 1 second long eccentric and concentric motions, so going up and down, taking 1 second to go up and down, to taking a good 6 seconds on the way down and 1 second on the way up. I also introduced a lot of strategies that would take a really long time to describe in one video, so I will save that for future videos. It's all in Glute Reset, so if you're already in it, it's already all in there. One of them that I really like the results from was pausing at the top of a lot of sets. And the last rep, usually it really depends what phase you're in. Different phases call for different type of isometric holds at the top and the bottom. You can hold at the stretch, you can hold at the top. There's a lot of different things that you can do, but those types of things really put a stressor on my brain to make the glutes a primary mover. That should be your priority. Again, it all connects to making sure the glute is always a primary mover. And part of the struggle with that is getting your brain to realize that, because you can know that, but your brain, it does not know that. Your brain will continue to use the thing that has a lot of neural establishment, especially if you're using weight. I took videos of myself to see different angles of my form to see what was up with that. There's a lot of things I found with that, but I found more things from testing hundreds of people for my Glute Reset system specifically. But for me, myself, I did a lot of videos of myself. I took a lot of videos of my form and seeing anything that I could tweak with it when it came to stretch, glute stretch, looking at the direction of the muscle fiber line, like the glute medius. It doesn't go straight down, it goes to the side, and most girls, most people in general don't know that. So I found that hip abduction machine movement is actually not ideal at all for glute medius growth. And sure enough, when I switched it to a movement like glute medius raises, where you're moving it in the direction of the fiber line, it started getting a lot better of a stretch, and it resulted in the best development of my glute medius I've had yet. I found that touching the muscle, the area that you want your brain to locate and find, which people find that really hard to do, because when you start from nothing, it's really hard to build from that. It's kind of like starting with credit card when you first turn 18. It's really hard to get off the ground with credit, because in order to get a credit card, you need a credit card most of the times. So it's like that, but with glute growth. So just get past that first initial frustration, and it grows immensely from there consistently. So you just have to get it off the ground, and once it's off the ground, you can use a little bit of something to work off of from there. But when you start with nothing, like especially from what I did, it can be very frustrating. It can feel like you just want to give up, especially when it's been like 3-4 weeks and you still can't feel anything. That's why Glute Reset completely fixes that, because you'll feel it in the first workout. So touching the muscle really helps you get that initial bump that you need off the ground. That's something that I found is really helpful for me, at least. And after I did those things, I started finally getting contraction and feel and control over my glutes. And that initial moment that I had, that I'll never forget, because I was like, I can finally drive through a Bulgarian split squat with only my glutes. And I would have thought that was impossible to do just a month beforehand. I really believe in this, and it is no joke at all. And I really want you guys to at least try it out on your own with no weight and see how it does for you. If you see results, I highly recommend starting with phase 1 of my glute reset system, and then it will just compound from there even more. It was really just going into the gym, lifting whatever I wanted, changing the exercises every time, which is detrimental to glute growth, by the way. You might be regressing and you will not be even aware of it, because you are changing up your exercises every single time. And then rest is really important. So the rest and recovery is what most people do not talk about enough. I was doing legs 3 days a week. I was lifting 345 plates on each side for hip thrusts. I was doing heavy RDLs. Everything was to failure. Yet I have the most glute development now that I've ever had, because I'm allowing rest in between workouts. Currently do it 2 times a week. Again, I say that very apprehensively, because I do not want you guys taking that and applying it to yourself, because if you're starting out with no weight, you can do way more workouts per week, which I would want you to. But as you go up in weight and progress yourself, I do not want you doing so many days a week. So it's exactly what I structured into the glute reset system as well. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. So what did this change? It changed my glutes, but not only my glutes, it grew them to the point of having a glute shelf. And this is what I have my whole channel based on, basically, is the glute shelf. This is something that I wanted for so long. I had the worst pancake unresponsive glutes you could ever possibly imagine. I just want to share every single thing that I know in the best way I can, because as a 16-year-old starting in the gym, I wish I had videos like this to look at. There was no one saying anything like any of the things I'm saying now, especially researchers. I was super big on research already, so it's taken all this time to get to where I'm at now, and I just want to share it with you guys as much as I possibly can, because I know there's women and men out there that are just dying to see this result for themselves, and I want them to come up on my videos. That's what I wish I had. It would have saved me probably over 6 years of trial and error, injuries, frustration, pain, money, time, and just so many things that I wish I could get back now. My lifts are consistently improving to the point now where if I tried to use my quads, I wouldn't be able to, because I've just built up the neural pathways in my brain so much to use my glutes as the primary mover for any movement like that, that it just automatically goes to the glutes. My confidence went up, and mainly the realization that it was not genetics, it was the technique of what I was placing on my brain as I was going through the movements. If you relate to this, Glute Reset is the exact system I built out of this experience. It's the same exact 4-phase structure and system that finally made everything click for me, and for hundreds of women with testing and one-on-one glute coaching clients who couldn't get their glutes to fire no matter what they tried or did. If you want the blueprint I wish I had when I was 16 years old when I first started, in order to save all that pain, time, money, and frustration, the link is in the description down below, and it is waiting for you to start growing your glute shelf. Let me know if this helped you. I always want to make more videos that actually change the way you train and change the way your glutes grow in a positive direction. I'm cheering for your progress, and I'll see you back here next week.